Namaste. Welcome to the Festival of Bharat. I am your host Kamal Madi Shetty. Today we are joined by Stephen Knapp ji, also known as Sri Nandanandana Dasaji. He is a world-renowned Vedic and Vaishnava scholar, author, and a direct disciple of Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ji. Over the last 5 decades, Stephen G has studied all of the major Vedic texts and written and produced 50 different publications and over 200 articles on the importance of Vedic culture and Indian history. He now spends time to preserve, purvey the ageless traditions and knowledge of Vedic culture and yoga systems of India. Namaste, Stephen G. Welcome to the Festival of
Namaste. Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Guruji, for joining us. If I could begin this conversation, Stephen G, asking you about your life journey. Can you
Mm.
please tell how you went from a boy who was born in a Christian family to becoming a Hindu guru? How did all of this happen?
Uh, well, it's an interesting journey for sure. I mean, it. You might say it started when I was about 7 years old because I remember uh, lying in bed on a Saturday morning, several Saturday mornings actually, where my parents were sleeping in, and I was just laying there wondering, how did I get here? How did I get here? How did I get into this body? How did I get into this family? How did I get born into this town or this area? And how is it that this body, you have to feed it, you have to let it sleep, then you have to take it to the bathroom, you have to clothe it. There's so many things you have to do just because you have this material body. And the whole thing just seemed so unnatural to me. I mean, everybody thinks that this is the way to live. But to me, it was like so unnatural. Why did I get this body instead of my neighbor's body? Jack's body. But if I was in Jack's body, that must mean I would get Jack's parents too. Maybe that wouldn't be such a good idea. So I was, talk about being a weird kid, but this was the kind of things I was thinking about. And so, in other words, it obviously was a carryover from a previous life where I had a particular existence in that life. And many people say, you know, if you want to talk about seeing the big picture, many people say that obviously I was a Hindu Indian in my previous existence.
Right.
So I'm now coming into this life asking all these questions. And I had no idea about spirituality. I had no idea about reincarnation, karma, or any of that stuff. That was always picked up along the way later on. But yet, I went to church and, studied the Bible. Or I remember in the late teenage years, I read the Bible from cover to cover. And it took about a year. I mean, it's not the easiest thing to sit down and read, but I still had so many questions. So, and I didn't know where to go to find the answers I was looking for. So I looked at everything. I looked at Egyptology, for example, Judaism and the mystical books that they had. I looked at mysticism from India, uh, tarot, I Ching, witchcraft, magic, you name it. I was looking into all these different things to try to find the answers. Then finally, a friend of mine, um, I was a musician at the time, so we had our avant-garde groups, discussing different unusual topics. And my friend, he went to Toronto, and I was living here in Michigan. But my friend went to Toronto and met some Hare Krishna devotees on the street, and they gave him like a little catalog of books. They didn't have so many books back then, and so he brought it back with me, and we're looking at it, and he was saying, "Yeah, this book here is kind of like the Indian Bible," and he was pointing at the Bhagavad Gita. So I said, "No, that's what I want. I want to get that book because I was interested in finding out all the different perceptions of God and spirituality from the different cultures around the world." So, okay, that's what I want. This is going to give me the insight into, Vedic culture and Hinduism and to see what it has to offer. So when I got it, it was the little blue book that Srila Prabhupada had written. And so I read that. And as I was reading it, it was starting to give me the answers I was looking for. Like, what is the soul, the size of the soul, the nature of the soul? karma, reincarnation, who and what is God? All these essential questions that I had that I really couldn't find the answers to anywhere else. And believe me, I was looking. So after conducting what I could say is my own comparative religion course, I finally came to Bhagavad Gita. And once I read Bhagavad Gita, then I knew how fallen I was spiritually. But at the same time, I knew what the standard was. And I just felt like I got to have more of this. So then I studied, before I ever went to any temples or anything, I started studying the Upanishads, even the Manu Samhita. I bought at a metaphysical bookstore, whatever I could get my hands on. And also then I sent for what was the Krishna book from ISKCON. ISKCON, the book distribution center, was in Boston at the time. So I remember I got the Krishna book, and it has this beautiful picture of Krishna on the cover of it. And I remember getting it, and I felt so happy when I got that book. It was like, oh wow, look at this! This is what I want. Really want to study this, which I did. And it was like I can only say it was like a reference to a past life that was starting to come back to me. I was starting to pick up where I left off from a previous existence. And then finally in 1972, no, it was 1971, I went to Denver. My friends and myself went to Denver. I was looking for, a career in music and this and that. Somehow we ended up in Denver, and there was a temple in Denver, and we met a devotee on the street. He gave me his card. I went to the temple and started going there on a regular basis. And and I had just become vegetarian not too long before that. So going to the temple and getting vegetarian food was the epitome of happiness. I was like, this is what I really want, and then I became familiar with the temple etiquette, you might say, taking your shoes off, bowing down, things like that. But I was also studying very clearly the other books that the ISKCON, the Hare Krishna movement, had at the time, like Sri Upanishad was one book that I really liked, Nectar of Devotion, and some of the others also that I liked. So I was studying all this stuff and getting information, but I was still very attached to music. So it took me a few more years to become detached from music, so to speak. And I finally joined the ashram in, 1975. I finally joined the ashram in 1975 and got initiated in 1976. That's when I became Sri Nandanandana, and which basically means the beautiful son of Maharaj Nanda, which is another name of Krishna. And so then it was so then you get used to doing pujas and the different ceremonies that are that go on in the temple, and learn how to be a priest and everything. Get Brahmin initiation with the Gayatri mantra, and but then in 1986, I wanted to try writing. Because Srila Prabhupada had mentioned in some of his instructions that he expected his disciples to write according to their own understanding. Right. So what I wanted to do was create a home study course. And so I created a home study course, which had a book, had a test that you take. It had tape recordings of different things, songs and stuff. And then at the end, you take a test and you get a certificate. Or you could just get the book. But most people just wanted the book. And so, okay, that kind of steered me in the direction that, okay, this is where things are going. Not so much a home study course, but just the book. And then two things happened at that time, because in order to do that, I created my own publishing company. So I had my own ISBN number and things like that. And I started to get requests from Baker and Taylor, which is a huge distribution company. So they started ordering books from me. I only had one book at the time, The Secret Teachings of the Vedas. That was my first book. Then I came out with another one called The Universal Path to Enlightenment. And that was basically it turned into a cottage industry where I started coming out with books every couple of years, or sometimes every year. And then I got a call from this company, and I couldn't figure out what this company was, but it was, I think in the early 90s or something, where this company said, "Do you still have the Secret Teachings of the Vedas?" Yeah. And what is the wholesale price on that? Well, 642 or something like that, because I was selling it for $15. So there's a certain formula by which you bring the price down 60% in order to sell to wholesalers. And it was a company called Amazon, and I couldn't figure out who these guys were, and I don't even know who called me. I think it was a woman that called me. It could have been Bezos' wife, for all I know. But and so sure, yeah. So I sent them books. Then they called me again, and then later on again, and so things started to develop. And then I also started developing more books. Things like the Vedic Prophecies was one book that I came out with, and then a few others. And then in the year 2000, I came out with a book called Proof of Vedic Culture's Global Existence,
Right.
which showed all the different cultures around the world, which I'd already researched. But now, with the background of understanding the Vedic tradition, I could also see, and with the use of other writers, the influence that Vedic culture had in other areas and other cultures and other religions around the world. So I started writing about that. I put it into a book. The thing of it is, I didn't think many people would be interested in that topic. Biggest mistake I ever made in my writing career. And it was selling quite a bit. And I'd already taken a few trips to India back in 87, 89, 90. And by the time the year 2000 came out, the book became very much interested by some of the Indian writers at the time, journalists, things like that. I was invited to what was called a thinkers meet. And some very important people came to that meeting. And what they did first was they ordered a case of that book, Proof of Vedic Culture's Global Existence. So all the people that attended got a copy of that book. And so because they liked that book so much, then the next thinkers meet that they had, they invited me to come to that and participate. And shortly after that, a few months later, I was invited to do a lecture tour in India. And the lecture tour was organized by the RSS, and they arranged all the different speaking places and who I was going to stay with and things like that, and the transportation. Everything was very well organized. And so I started giving lectures. But at the same time, I started to see the different areas and the different ways the Indian culture was being challenged by outside foreigners or outside religions, things like that. And that's when I started thinking that, we need to do more to defend the Vedic tradition and culture so we can perpetuate that through future generations. And that's when I came out with the book Crimes Against India back in, I think it was 2011. And so anyway, things gradually developed in that way. I became more and more familiar with the holy sites of India. I became more and more familiar with the traditions within India. Now I've taken up to 24 different trips in India. I've seen every state of India except Mizoram, Meghalaya, and Tripura. So I've acquired a lot of experience, a lot of insight, and it's been a great adventure, quite honestly.
Thank you so much, Stephen G. It's a very inspiring journey, and thank you for sharing, your journey with us. And we are very grateful for your service for Hindu Dharma.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about, because I think this is something that you can best answer. For people who are uninitiated and people who don't know much about Hindu Dharma, as well as I would say even younger generation, some of the younger generations in India who are often very uprooted from their own culture because of the kind of education system we have in India. Uh, how would you describe Sanatan Dharma to them?
Well, Sanatana Dharma can be described in several different ways. I focus on the initial way of Sanatana Dharma, meaning a path by which one understands their true identity as a spiritual being. In other words, another aspect is Sanatana Dharma is not just a path, but it's a state of being where you begin to understand and act on what is your true spiritual identity, how you fit into this world, where you want to take this life, where you're going with this world, and where you should be going in this world. So Sanatana Dharma also means, Sanatana means eternal, Dharma can be expressed as duty. So the Sanatana Dharma, or eternal duty of humanity, is to undertake this path of spiritual understanding. In other words, you haven't achieved the goal of human existence until you start to take up this path of spiritual inquiry. The fact is, there's some verses in the Vedic literature which says that until you ask yourself the questions like, who am I? What am I? Where am I going? Then basically you're not even a human being yet. You're still, you know, engaged in the basic activities of eating, sleeping, mating, defending, trying to, you know, uh, in, climb the corporate ladder, so to speak,
Yeah.
develop your economic position and all that, which basically is another form of what they say is polished animal life.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So we want to go beyond that. So then we have to take up the path of Sanatana Dharma, which is the path of spiritual inquiry to find out who and what we really are, how we even got this body, what are we doing here? So that's the real question to ask. And then you can take up the real purpose. Otherwise, it's simply as the Vedic literature explains, it's just going round and round and round in the endless cycle of samsara, or the cycles of birth and death. Round and round you go, simply taking up the same activities as you've done before. So, it's like banging your head against the wall because it feels so good when you stop, simply because a little bit of pleasure in the material world makes everything all right. Well, the thing of it is, the little bit of pleasure doesn't even compare with the spiritual pleasure, the spiritual ecstasies you can attain simply by engaging in a higher level of spiritual experience. And this is the whole point of Vedic culture, which really caught my eye, is that the Vedic culture doesn't depend on faith alone. You may start with faith, but it gives you the process by which you purify or spiritualize your consciousness enough where you begin to have your own spiritual experiences. And that's what makes the difference. I give the example of a radio wave. A radio picks up so many different radio waves, or television, whatever. You can't see the radio waves, you can't taste them, you can't hear them, you can't feel them, but they're there. But you have to have the proper receiver. So the same thing is, spiritual energy is all around us. You just have to become the proper receiver to perceive that spiritual dimension, which is all around us. And the Vedic tradition, yoga, is the means by which you can purify or spiritualize your consciousness, so your consciousness itself becomes tuned in to all this spiritual dimension that exists all around us. And then once you begin to have your own spiritual experiences, then you have no further doubt as to the reality of that being there, the spiritual dimension being there, and also the process that is given to us in the Vedic tradition, which can deliver that to you or take you into that dimension.
Absolutely, Stephen G. I think you very succinctly summarized it for us, and you mentioned a few things there which I would want to unpack. We often hear young people in India, talking about religion and saying that they're not interested in religion because it doesn't accommodate their questions. They're very curious, and they don't want to be told what they have to believe, and etc. etc. But as you said, Hindu Dharma and Vedic culture is it not only has questions, it encourages questions and curiosity. Can you explain more about this?
Well, yeah, questions and answers are the basis of the Vedic tradition, unlike the other religions, which are usually faith-based,
Yeah.
or some say fear-based, but faith-based. But in the Vedic tradition, you can see where the Upanishads, the itihasas, the Puranas, they're all based on questions and answers. So basically, any question is legitimate. You can ask any question you want, and anybody who's experienced will be able to give you the answers. And this is the difference. And this is why the youth should also have more regard, a higher regard for their own culture. Because this is a true story, but I remember I heard where one rather well-to-do girl in Delhi was saving her money so she could find the best yoga teacher possible in California. So it's like, wait a minute, you're in India. You think yoga it was originated in California? No, not quite. They are still dependent on India, where India is the originator of yoga. So in other words, she could have saved her money and could have looked in her own backyard, so to speak, and found some of the best yoga teachers that the world has to offer right there in her own homeland. So this is one of the things where Indians should have a higher regard for their own culture, because we're all looking towards India. I mean, maybe I was an Indian in my past life, but the thing of it is, here in America, I found what I was looking for by looking towards India. And then, of course, traveling there and seeing so many of the holy sites. And it's like, so in other words, you don't really have to go anywhere. Indians shouldn't have to feel that whatever's from the West is the best, which is another common saying, because it's not. I think India, when people look at their own tradition and see what it has to offer, which is why I wrote the book, Advancements of Ancient India's Vedic Tradition. And you can find all my books on my website, which is www.stephen-knapp.com. And Advancements of Vedic Culture shows all the different ways, whether it was not just yoga, but also Ayurveda, surgery, methods of surgery, even textiles, metallurgy, the shipping industry, all these things, what to speak of Vastu and Jyotish and Ayurveda, all these things were well advanced, much more advanced in India than it was in the surrounding countries. Sanskrit, for example, is highly sophisticated language, practically the first sophisticated language to appear in this world. And let's not forget the mathematical premises that and principles that the Vedic tradition came up with are highly advanced, were highly more advanced than anything else that could be found in the area or on the planet, for that matter, at the time. And many of the inventions that we have today, whether it's computer language, things like that, are only available and were developed because of the original advancements that were found in the Vedic tradition itself. So, and also the cosmography that we're still trying to figure out of the structure of the universe. There was a very clear understanding in many ways of what that cosmography consisted of, as described in the Puranic literature of India. So, I mean, I could go on, but the point of it is, there's much to be admired and respected from what we have had and what we found in Vedic culture, because Vedic culture itself is the process by which gives you the means to reach your highest potential possible. And it has always been that way for humanity itself, how you can reach your highest potential, not just materially, physically, healthily, mentally, emotionally, but ultimately spiritually. And so it's a whole process which can be directed on through the Vedic system in so many different levels that we can apply to our lives today. Even there's different literatures on farming, how to get the best out of your agriculture, just simple things like that you can find, and systems that still work today. Let's face it, it's not antiquated. It's not so antiquated, but all this stuff is still relevant today if you look at it and learn how to apply it in your lives today. Simple as that.
Absolutely, Stephen G. It is so amazing the depth and the breadth of the knowledge that is available. and just waiting for us to go out there and immerse ourselves in that. Uh, Guruji, another common perception among the youth is that there's no need to worry about the Hindu way of life being attacked or being diminished in any way. But you've written multiple books on why that is not true, and also about the need to defend Hindu Dharma. Can you explain what are the threats to this way of life?
Well, anybody who says that, there's nothing to worry about, the Sanatana Dharma is eternal and all that, in that part, it's true. But the thing of it is, if you read Bhagavad Gita, one of the purposes of Lord Krishna's appearance was to reestablish the broken chain of disseminating spiritual knowledge, the Vedic tradition, the Vedic knowledge that has been existing since time immemorial. It goes up and down. It has times when it becomes practically it disappears from the face of the globe.
Right.
So one of Krishna's duties is to maintain that. And his last appearance 5,000 years ago was to reestablish that broken chain of disciplic succession, to continue the Vedic knowledge that is there for humanity's development. And so even today, the thing of it is, we're entering into the age of Kali Yuga, where it's known that atheists and some of the demoniac mentality becomes very prominent in society. When that happens, you have people who not just disrespect spirituality and disrespect the Vedic tradition, they would also like to see its ultimate demise. And there are, you might say, forms of government, institutions that are actually working towards that. Now, the one thing about India and the Vedic tradition you have to understand is it is a great promoter of individual freedom.
Right.
The individual freedom to go on the spiritual quest to find out who and what you really are. But if you look around, there's many governments, even today, that have tried to squelch that freedom as much as possible, to keep people under their control, to keep them from asking questions, to keep them from being completely free as individuals, to keep them from being free from participating in those processes which heighten our spiritual understanding. And so in that regard, we have to make sure that India remains the homeland of a dynamic and thriving Vedic tradition. If we ever lose that, then humanity, at least as we know it today, will cease to exist.
Absolutely.
And if you think you lose your freedom now, I mean, if you look around, you can see how many people don't have the freedom to do as they would like.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that we preserve and protect and perpetuate the Vedic tradition as clearly as possible, so everybody has access to it. Like you just said a few minutes ago, it's just waiting for us to utilize. We have to make sure we don't ignore that opportunity.
Absolutely, Stephen G. It actually flows to what I wanted to ask you next. And, as India rises at the world stage, one hopes that it rediscovers its roots, and it pervades Hindu Dharma with self-confidence and is not apologetic about it. In your view, Guruji, what would a vision that is rooted, in Vedic culture look like for the world?
Well, it would be a world of freedom. It would be a world of, well, my spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, once expressed something that his spiritual master also said, that basically there is no, what should I say, limitation. There's no wanting in this world. This world can produce as much as whatever we need. The difficulty is there's a lack of management. Due to that lack of management, one area of the world may have a lot of food, another area of the world may be starving.
Right.
With proper management, that can be equaled out so that everybody has the facility they need to lead a decent and happy life. And what is the necessity for that happy management? God consciousness. We need to be aware of who we really are as spirit beings, parts and parcels of God, and to manage things in a way of God consciousness so that everybody has the facility and the means to live a happy and decent life with based on proper management. Proper management, which means the government also has to have a clear understanding, a clear consciousness of who and what they are and what is the real mission of life. What is the real purpose of life? If we don't have that, then you're going to have more incidences like the invasion of Ukraine. You're going to have, which makes absolutely no sense to anybody. It's just, not only are there hundreds and thousands of people being killed, but now one of the breadbaskets of the world is being uh, desecrated and destroyed, so that now the whole world is going to suffer what some people say are going to be massive food shortages over the next several months to a year. Uh,
Yeah.
So, what does this accomplish? It simply increases the misery. Let's face it, life can be tough enough as it is.
Yeah.
Why should we make it any tougher? And these invasions like this simply destroy the happiness of many, many people, and which produces very, very bad karma for those countries that engage in that kind of activity, or especially those kind of rulers. So this is something that needs to be changed. And if the government, the rulers, can have that level of God consciousness where we see each other equally and arrange the proper management so that everybody can benefit, it can change the world.
Absolutely, Stephen G. I think it is so important to realize how that a dharmic world order, if I can call it that, would be so different and also would do well for everybody across the world. And it's important that we encourage that. Before I conclude, Guruji, I wanted to request you to share your message for young Hindus, be it in India or elsewhere in the world, uh, about the need to value their heritage, and what can they do to contribute to the cause of Hindu Dharma.
Well, it's like this: when the devotees, ISKCON Hare Krishna devotees, were going to enter into China, they did some research, and they found out that one of the reasons why communism was so prevalent and accepted in that country was because the marketplace was filled with literature, whether it's books, pamphlets, leaflets, on whatever, on the glories of communism.
Right.
Now, communism has never worked anywhere.
Yeah.
You have to prop it up as much as possible so people become convinced of it.
Yeah.
But in Vedic culture, you don't have to convince anybody of anything except simply present the truth.
Right.
The truth itself will be convincing alone by itself. So the point of it is if we can continue to market this, spread this, and a market doesn't mean to be a profit-making enterprise, what it means is to distribute this knowledge as much as possible to as many people as possible, and let them have the advantage of understanding what real Vedic Dharma is. Uh, it can change India. It can make it extremely powerful, because then people have their own freedom to investigate on their own. I've traveled all over India, and sometimes I hear the phrase, well, the trouble with India is their religion. No, 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 no. What I have seen is the trouble is the forgetfulness
Mhm.
of what Vedic culture has to offer. It's distancing from it
Yeah.
or misinterpreting it.
Yeah.
If you have a true interpretation, a true understanding of what Vedic culture has to offer, no one will deny its superior content. One of the sayings in the Upanishads is that one of the most important things in life is to find somebody who can actually explain to you the spiritual truth. The problem is there are many fakes, there are many frauds that try to pose themselves as someone who can give you the truth. So it's unfortunate we have to find our way through this to find out someone who's genuine. But I can tell you, once you find the genuine source of Vedic information. It can help you on any different level. Like I said, whether it's your health, your emotions, whether it's your intellect, whatever, up to your spiritual understanding of things. It's all there waiting for you. And if you can find the true source of that information, it can make a complete difference in how you live, how you see yourself. I wrote one book called The 11th Commandment, which is based on the idea that if you, which was the next step for spiritual social development, if you see yourself and if a society can see themselves as spirit souls, part and parcels of God, and see that the soul, that also that potency is in everybody else, it'll begin to change how you act towards others, towards yourself, and towards the environment, towards nature. And it can begin to, like I say, change the world. And India itself will become a very dynamic and very thriving country, both materially, socially, economically, and spiritually, the more the Indian youth value their own heritage. I mean, this is their heritage.
Yes.
They need to value their own heritage in order to make this possible. It doesn't mean you give up science. It doesn't mean you give up modern development. You just combine the two together, and it becomes so powerful. So I hope everybody will take that more seriously.
Absolutely, Stephen G. Thank you so much. This has been very enlightening, and you have shared your insights on a wide variety of topics. We've discussed many topics today, and I'm very, very grateful for you to sharing those insights with us. And also would like to offer my pranams to you for all your seva and service for Vedic culture, for Hindu Dharma. Thank you so much, Guruji.
Well, thank you for having me here. Glad to be a part of it.
Thank you, Guruji. And to our viewers, I would like to request you to please subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and do let us know what you feel in the comment section below. We will be back with another such insightful conversation. Until then, take care and namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste. We hope you enjoyed this Chitti Media content. Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.